It's important to realize that the gliders are designed according to the rules and the scoring. The rules have a very high impact on the way we fly as a competitor and the way we design as a designer. If the legislators decide that any competition should be raced on ENC wings, then the manufacturer will produce very specific ENC wings. And it doesn't mean that someone which was happily flying an ENC wing before will be able to fly these ENC competition wings.
Do you guys still discuss making Enzo 3 better, or is this more or less like Enzo 4 is only possible if the sport sees a paradigm shift in its paperwork first, and then the designers will get to work?
We're trying to do an Enzo 4, whatever are the rules. We are working since maybe 5 years. And we're trying to make progress every glider, otherwise we don't release.
Hello and welcome back to Paragliding Atlas. I'm your host Enzo Singh, and joining us today is the man himself, Luc Armant. Luc, this has been a long time coming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Luc, I want to dive right in and, compare, let's say, 2011's situation to 2025. The industry has seen a fair bit of evolution over the past years, but a debate, or a safety debate, as Gavin called it in his show, has raged on once again. And back in 2011, we had sports class, which was deemed to be too dangerous, or open class, which was deemed to be too dangerous, and people said that we need a reform of some sorts. Fast forward to 2025, we have put in all the time, energy, and money in making wings safer and more fun, and yet we are standing at the same question once again. So, from your eyes, who has seen the industry evolve, is this something different, or is this just history repeating itself all over again?
No, I don't think the history repeats. Things are evolving, but we keep having accidents. But we try to progress. I mean, everyone, manufacturers, but also obviously organizers, pilots, everything. I mean, we're doing fantastic sport there. We're having a lot of fun. It's really great. It's a great sport. But unfortunately, sometimes there is some accidents. And so we can only try to get things better.
Fair enough, Luc. If we have to look at the main reasons why open class had to go away, is it something similar to the reasons that are being called out for the too much focus on performance versus too little focus on safety? Because I think Kriegel came up with his statement a few days ago, said that we tend to focus on one aspect when that one is weighing heavy and the other aspect takes a back seat. But then when we reach a period where we don't see that many, mishaps or something, and then we just go back to chasing safety. So what's your point of view on this?
There are several things on your question, but it's true that the community is reacting to events. It's very difficult to have the community anticipating things. So it's when there are some accidents, there are some reactions. If there is no accident, when some people warn for whatever possible problems, usually there is no reaction until a problem comes. That's the way things are. And 2011, there was a spectacular problem because 2 fatalities in the first task of the Worlds. And from there was a reaction and a move. And then we had also luck has something to play with accidents, because we only kind of count fatal accidents for some reasons. And the sport is accepted a lot more broken bones, of course, than fatal accidents. But there has been a long period without too much fatal accidents, and community was happy, but at the last World there was one fatal accident, and other fatal accidents, other competitions. And so there is a reaction which is a fair reaction to try to improve things. So there was also a question about open class.
I can
Or something.
clarify that, Luke.
Yeah, but I can answer. I think open class was obviously missing a little bit of testing from some manufacturers, and there was sometimes some not so good behavior in some gliders that was responsible for really some accident pilot couldn't do anything about. But there was also other things that has been corrected. It's not only the gliders at that time. Final glide was very dangerous. It's important to realize that gliders are designed according to the rules and the scoring. The scoring is very important. And at that time, you were not having so much leading points, mostly time points. And you could, every minute, if I remember well, you could gain 30 time points. On top of that, the competition with the 2 fatalities on the first task was happening in which is very lifty IRA with convergence, and the final glide was in convergence. So we're talking of final glides with excess altitude. And final glide with excess altitude, if you just go to a cylinder, there is no brain to have. You just need to go as fast as possible. There is no Mach ready anymore, nothing. You just go as fast as possible, and you earn maybe 25 or 30 points per minute, when 1 point can make a difference in the overall of the competition. So the format was making a really big push for the glider to have absolute top speed without so much testing, trimmers on risers, so a lot of ingredients to create accidents.
Fair enough. I think that is a very common analogy which is used in aviation in general, that it does not take one mess up which contributes to the mishap eventually. It's a combination of things which lead us there. But I think you touched upon a very important point there where you mentioned that how we fly depends a lot about legislation and the scoring and how we push the limits. So more or less, if I have to narrow this down for easier understanding of our audiences, are we not having enough learned people in the sport who want to sit down and do the boring part? Because regardless, anybody who gets pushed into the sport is coming in for the joy of flight. And legislation, paperwork, and all the, bookkeeping is usually done by people who are not so, or in a professional manner, who are not so much into outdoor extreme adventure sports or something. Whereas our sport is mostly consisting of pilots who are picking up various roles. So do you see a lack of skilled brain power sitting down and saying that I want to work towards this? Or is this just evolution taking its own course, more or less?
I don't think so. I think there is a lot of good brains working on rules and scoring and stuff, but it needs some drive. I mean, a lot of these guys, they are also pilots, passionate pilots. I also try to spend a bit of my working time on the subject, participate to some expert group, and give some technical inputs. But it's also difficult to get things working efficiently in some groups because you need to agree. It's good to have a lot of brain working together, but it needs also some efficiency in the debate and some leadership, and it's difficult to organize things. But CCC has been created, the scoring has evolved, the things are evolving in a good manner. It takes time, but this sort of things, I think, can only take time.
Okay, I want to take the example of ozone. we have seen a lot of brands come and go in the industry. Legacy brands are few, but the ones who exist are more or less cementing their place as the time goes on. Um, Mostly brands have been started, as you said, that we are a bunch of passionate pilots. So somebody is like, okay, I want to start make a living out of this. I'll go out and put my own brand and invest in R&D and collect a team. So Ozone has done a lot of things right to come as one of the top contenders when it comes to wing choice. And I believe Ozone needed a lot of paperwork, a lot of R&D, and a lot of other things that contribute to the success eventually. So if FAI or Civil or any of these, the companies or maybe even European norms, if they were run commercially, like the brand, is there more chances of success? Because I think money is a big problem, that anybody who's coming in is doing it more or less out of passion and not out of profit.
Hmm. Yes, but like the World Cup, for example, is a kind of company. It's a non-profit company, but it needs uh, to not lose money. So all the organizers, they need to organize things. They do that not for earning money. Most of them is for the passion as well. But they need to organize the things efficiently so they don't lose money. Don't know if that's answering your question. Maybe I haven't understood correctly.
It's basically like, are we not having professional structures in place enough that invite the right people, more or less? Because Ozone had a professional structure based on, let's say, the model of capitalism, and they succeeded in surviving where other brands eventually lost out on the race. So if Ozone can do it when it comes
Yeah.
to commercializing the selling part, then why can't we professionalize the structure when it comes to managing the sport? That is my dilemma here.
Oh, okay. I think it's quite professional in a way that organizers are in competition. I mean, if you speak about capitalism, uh, organizers are in competition in a way. So they are pushed to do a good job. I don't blame organizer or CAVL or stuff like that. Everything can be more efficient, and but there are some feedbacks. There are some competition. There was a time where PwC was in competition with CAVL, and they were pushing each other. At the moment, it's kind of the same leading team, which also gives some advantages because everything can be equal in the scoring and
Let's talk about legislation a bit. I think, as you mentioned, that the way sport evolves is a lot about how the rules are set. Um, Rules do change, but not up to a large extent. Are we lacking tightening of rules at a lower level, which eventually leads to this kind of an attitude once we reach the professional levels? Or what is kind of lacking that allows us to make machines which are really fun, really cool to fly, but when they go bad, they go really bad, and sometimes the cost that we pay is the highest possible one?
about rules. You talking about Section 7
Not
competition?
just that, also the guidelines that manufacturers have to adhere to, because regardless, it is the European norms based on which the equipment is being produced. Section 7, of course, has its own importance when it comes to racing, but more or less the
Yeah.
ecosystem of rules.
There are many things behind rules here. You have European norm, which is driven by European administration with a group of experts trying to make it evolve, and it takes time. Um, there is the Section 7, which includes the CCC rules and all the scoring things. This is a big book of rules for competition driven by CIVL. And there is a PWC rules, which also is in accordance with Section 7 anyway, mostly. But all these rules have to be manipulated with a lot of cautious, because it's very difficult to anticipate the consequences of any change of these rules. And so often the people writing these rules, they want to try, test before really applying them, because they may have some good effect and they may have some side effect that you don't know. And it's difficult to anticipate. So there is a lot of debate of experts and some testing before a rule is set, a change is set.
So you mean prototyping of some sorts? Basically, when you guys come out with a new product, you prototype it, and then do a hit and try method, and that is kind of lacking over here. That we don't have a foolproof method where we can test the success of rules, and the only way is to go out and keep on going ahead with the challenges that we face. Like it just seems a very lost case in that regard, that we don't know which rule will work, but we can only keep on trying.
Yeah. I mean, the rules are tested and they eventually are changed, EN norms is changing like every 2 or 3 years. Section 7 is changing every year. A lot of details like way of calculation in the end of speed, in leading points. CCC rules are also evolving. There is a lot of debate now. But the rules have a very high impact on the way we fly as a competitor and on the way we design as a designer. But this effect is very difficult to anticipate.
Let's talk about ENC class. It's not that long ago that the whole class saw a revolution of some sorts. From your perspective, who has seen the sport go from open to triple C, down to, there was a time when ENDs were considered as the go-to gliders for a lot of pilots, and now almost nobody is talking about END. So how did ENC class get its significance, and why do we suddenly see a whole new level of performance being pushed onto a lower category of glider that was never meant to be raced? It was just a cross-country machine for pilots who were looking not to increase the bar too high, but still have the fun.
Yeah. So a bit of history here. We had open class. After Piedrahita 2011, it was END. The reaction was to forbid open class and glider need to have an EN. So the manufacturers, they produced, the first competition was done with existing ENDs. And then the manufacturers did specific design END for competition, because manufacturers wanted to win competitions.
Mm-hmm.
And this specific design were nothing to do with the previously existing ENDs.
Fair enough.
And for example, in ozone, we had the Mantra R04, and we produced for competition a wing called Enzo, which was based on our open class, slightly modified to pass END norm. But we were still selling the END for leisure pilots, the targeted pilots that we had doing cross-country, experienced cross-country pilots. And at the same time, we were selling the competition END glider. But this was putting a lot of confusion in the market, because the people, they had the idea that EN stamp is a way to know what glider is for them. So there is a pilot flying END wing, and he thinks his level is for flying END wings.
Mm-hmm.
whatever the manufacturer says. But the reality is not like that. E&D is not. It's just a big guarantee of some testing, but the product is targeted for some. You should know what the manufacturer says about the public target. But because there is this confusion with EN and the target public, a lot of people were buying competition gliders where they didn't have the level for that. So that was one of the reasons. There was other reason behind, but I don't want to develop too much, for creating the CCC. So basically it was a class of competition with some specific rule easy to apply for competition and testing. Some guarantee of some behaviors, flight testing. So regarding ENC wings, it's exactly the same story as END. If the legislators decide that any competition should be raced on ENC wings, then the manufacturer will produce very specific ENC wings for competition. And it doesn't mean that someone which was happily flying an ENC wing before will be able to fly these ENC competition wings. These competition wings will be, if you apply just only ENC as a criteria, these competition wings will be maybe an aspect ratio of 8, and some really high performance features that will be only suitable for top pilots. So it's important to always the story of rules and side effect of rules. You can say any ENC current ENC wing like the Photon is great. I'm making so nice cross country with it. It's so great to race with it. Why don't we make all competition with ENC then? So we have all these sort of gliders to race with, and it will be super safe and fun. But when you do that, you don't anticipate for the next generation glider, because you have to understand that every manufacturer is in competition.
I don't want to put you in a spot, Luke, because, yeah, probably, there are some responsibilities that come when you are associated with the industry-leading brand like Ozone, but help me understand this. How are we not sabotaging the ENC class as we did with the END class back in the day? Because right now, there is not a single pilot out in the market who would want to go out and put their money on a three-liner ENC simply because of the image that a three-liner versus two-liner has. And when the majority of the field is going out and getting a better glide in a two-liner, getting faster speed in a two-glider, everyone is going to just go in for two-liner ENC. And to me, this is clearly history repeating itself, but in a different class altogether. And right now, I understand that we are focusing on triple Cs because the noise and the anger, or like the conversation, is in that regard. But I see this thing coming back to sports class in, like, the kickback will come in a couple of years, and it will be ugly and it will be messy, and we will be scratching our heads that what did we not learn that we are in this position all over again?
First, ENC is existing since a long time, and it's not going crazy. If it's not used in competition where competition results has an importance for manufacturers who promote themselves, then manufacturers' interest is only to have a glider that is suitable for a market they target. So when you target a specific market, I would say like pilot, like are flying 100 hours a year, doing this sort of cross country. This is a pilot I want to target, and I want them to have a good wing, for sure a performant wing, but a wing where they don't crash themselves with. Because if I design a glider where that is very competitive, very performant, but the target pilots are crashing a lot with this, then I just fire a bullet in my own foot as a manufacturer. It would be like maybe few months term bad calculation. Maybe you sell a little bit at the start, but then the glider has very bad reputation. Your brand has a very bad reputation, and you don't sell it anymore. So that's the reason why ENC gliders are, I think, stayed reasonably in their target in terms of safety since a few years ago. I mean, maybe 10 years or 15 years. But now, if you start trying to promote your glider with competition results, where the competition use top pilots, which means pilots able to fly difficult wings, then manufacturer will have interest in making difficult to fly gliders but competitive. So SRS, for example, we see SRS with a bit of worry because it's a way to promote gliders as a manufacturer. You could say, "Oh, look, my glider is doing so much good result. It's a good glider. You should buy this one." While maybe the guys doing the good result are top pilots, expert, able to fly, and very skilled. And then that would be problematic. Even though you could say as a manufacturer, so the same story as END I was explaining, you could say, okay, this glider has won the competition, but it's not for you. It's CNC, but it's not for you. And a lot of pilots, they won't hear that. They would only hear it's CNC.
Yeah, true.
And they would buy it. So that's where a solution could be to create a proper sport class that has its own criteria on top of IN or separately from IN.
Makes sense. Before I move on to the next topic, Luke, this has been at the back of my head, and I'm pretty sure there are a few pilots in the audience as well. Like maybe not the racing ones, maybe not the ones who are already having WPRS points and rankings in their name. But let's talk about a 50-hour pilot. Let's talk about someone who has passed his school, invested his savings, because, I mean, it takes quite a lot of money to get to 50 hours in this sport now. Can you possibly be ready for a two-liner ENC after 50 to 70 hours on an ENB? Or is this a fool's paradise that all of our community is willingly keeping their eyes shut at?
I wouldn't point things into liner, like two-liner, three-liner, things like that. I mean, two-liner doesn't mean so much. There are huge difference in design between an Enzo 3 and a Delta 5, for example. A Delta 5 is not more difficult to handle than a Delta 4, which is three-liner in the center. The Delta 5 is two-liner. But there are a lot of parameters for the design that are not called in any way. The only thing that we look is how many risers there are on the bottom, but it doesn't really point too much about what is the reality of this glider. I mean, in terms of behavior. So I would say yes, it's possible. It may also be possible to have an ENB two-liner that is easy to fly and suitable for someone 50 hours. But this cannot happen at the moment because ENB is not allowed without collapse lines. For some reason, I could explain, but we don't have time.
Help me understand this, Luke. Is human brain capable of handling a two-liner E and A one day? Because if two-liner is going to become the norm of the society, then why aren't we starting pilots on two-liner so that the inherent feeling which we develop from the beginning is on a two-liner? Why do we even have three-liners anymore?
I explained three-liner cannot be produced or certified without collapse lines.
Except that part. Let's forget the legislation for a
yeah,
second.
yeah. But then you shouldn't be too much focused on how many liner here. But you're right about the feeling, for example. Things are evolving with a more and more riser control with some pulleys. So the feeling could become even like Parakite, you know, the mustache. They are three liners, but the feeling is like two liners. It's a direct control of the risers, but it's a very different thing because there is no accelerator. You do everything with your hands. But you could have an ENB with speed system, like classic paraglider. When you go full speed, you have the similar things as a parakite. And that could be fun. But of course, a mustache is not for a beginner, or parakite in general. And ENA, you could try to optimize the line drag. For some schools, they like to have more glide ratio for the student for the same behavior as if the glider is still very forgiving as a glider for beginners in schools. So it's possible to have ENA with better performance, maybe two-liners or whatever solutions, as long as they are suitable for beginners.
Let's talk a little bit about test reports, Luke. I'm pretty sure this is kind of common amongst most of the brands that when you usually go a category up, and I've seen specifically for Zeno in Ozone that there is only one or two letters, and mostly in accelerated asymmetric, which makes it jump to the next class. So if you were to pick up a wing for yourself, or like let's say a good friend, which specific test result would you want a person to look at before making their decision?
I would say don't look at any specific result. Just look at what the manufacturer is saying about his glider. What is the target pilot for this glider? And that's what we should look as a customer, because all these manufacturers around, they are just telling the truth about what the glider is for. Who is it for? And these results about collapses and things, they're not really telling you so much about the glider.
Let's come back to Enzo for a sec, Luke. I know we're running out of time, so I'll have to keep my questions short. Enzo 3 has been pretty much unchallenged and at the top of status quo for closing in on a decade. I think 8 years or 8 or 9 years, something like that, when you guys came out with that design.
2017. So yep, 8 or
So
9 years. Yep.
right now, do you guys still discuss making Enzo 3 better, or is this more or less like, fits in the norms, we have pushed it as much as we could, and now Enzo 4 is only possible if the sport sees a paradigm shift in its paperwork first, and then the designers will get to work?
That's a good question, but no, we're trying to do an Enzo 4, whatever are the rules are doing. And we are working since maybe 5 years on Enzo 4. And then we're trying to make progress every glider, otherwise we don't release. And it needs to be in every aspect. You can make progress in one aspect, like top speed, but then a sacrifice in another aspect like sync rate or behavior. But we want something that is globally better, and it's quite difficult. So we haven't succeed our criteria for the moment, but we're still working hardly on the subject at the moment.
That's so exciting to hear. Any tentative, let's say, date that you guys discuss amongst yourself when you're sitting in the office? I was like,
Dates we try to decide to discuss, and sometimes we give information. It's been like 3 or 4 times that we say to the pilot, maybe next year we have an Enzo 4, and it's not happening. So you can decide date, but it doesn't help you.
what does Mike?
I mean, it doesn't
What
help.
does Mike say about this? Does he want it to come out early, or he's like not thinking about it?
He's okay with Enzo 3. He's okay because this market is very specific. When you have a glider that is competitive, even though it's old, the people are still buying it. The pilots, I mean, they're still buying it because they can see it's still competitive. That's due to the competition environment. When you have an ENB that is still competitive, you don't sell it after 2 years, even though it's still the best ENB on the market, for example.
Yeah,
You
marketing
understand?
is huge in E and B category, man. That's like weird to see paragliding.
No, but any pilot in ENB doesn't have the mean to know which one is better, which one has the best performance or behavior or whatever. So by default, they would first discard anything that is old.
Makes sense.
You understand? And a competition pilot doesn't care if it's old or new. He wants the best.
True.
So that's a reason why we don't sell after 2 years or so. And we are pushed to produce new model.
Look, I've been wanting to ask this question to you guys for a very long time. And your test pilot and world champion Honorin was on my show when I started a couple of years ago, and he said that the answer depends on profile. And my question is basically that you guys came out with shark nose and you decided not to patent it for the greater good, for the community to become safer overall, which was a very selfless move, I would say. And maybe that is karma coming back to you, that you have managed to keep the lead in such big numbers when it comes to your closest competitor. Time and again, we see someone coming out and say that, hey, I am discovering the technology which is the shining star of tomorrow. For example, Swing said rust helps keep the rear edge deflated. Jin came out with the wave leading edge after investing crazy amounts of money in the R&D. So if we collectively did not have patents in the community, will we be having safer wings? Or does it not really matter that much with these technologies, because eventually it's profile?
No, it doesn't matter. This industry is too small to bother attacking ourselves and trying to make money with patents. So, I mean, if you talk about the Rust, Swing will be very happy that we use the Rust in our gliders. And if we use a wave leaning edge, Jin would not attack us in any way. We have implemented winglets on our gliders recently, while it was used for edges by Advance.
Fair enough. Coming back to the debate that is going on, Luke, a lot of people are saying triple Cs should be going away. Do triple Cs really need to go away, or do we need to become more responsible and more structured overall with paperwork, with legislation, with testing, with hit and try method? What is your take on that?
My take is we should make this triple C evolve in the rules. That's it. So also in the scoring, in my opinion, I'm trying to explain that, but it's a long subject. I cannot explain it here. We don't have the time. I need to go. I'm sorry. I see my wife is sending me a lot of WhatsApp. very nervous.
I understand, Luke. Well, on that note, yeah, man, thank you for coming. It was a long time in the planning that I wanted to have this chat with you, and I think we have touched upon a lot of interesting topics here. So, whenever.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, welcome. And we could redo one if you have some other question important. But sorry for now. I need to go. See you soon.
Have a good evening, Luke. See you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.